Outstanding, the ultimate accolade for teachers. We challenge secondary teacher Louise Radford to go from good to outstanding. A top inspector will observe one lesson. 2 experts will fine-tune her practice and beef up her presentation. She then gets 2 weeks to take on the advice before the inspector comes back for the final verdict.
Trying to do all these things with your teaching, but then trying to move yourself a step forward is an incredibly tiring, difficult thing to do.
Kingsbury High School is a massive comprehensive in northwest London. Louise Radford is an English teacher in her 2nd year at Kingsbury.
Since my teaching career started, I've wanted to know how to be the best possible teacher I can, because I think it's a crime to go into the classroom and not do the best of your ability every single day.
Her English department rates her teaching as good.
I'm really looking forward to that process of finding out the kind of teacher I am, what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, what I can do to improve, and going through a really vigorous process of improvement. Everyone look at the interactive whiteboard.
Louise will focus this challenge on her Year 9s.
I think Miss Radford could improve by getting the whole class involved and making sure that everyone gets involved instead of the usual people putting up their hands.
I want you to do it in your books.
Sometimes she just makes us work on our own, but she is a good, really good teacher.
In just 2 days' time, she'll be under the gaze of our eagle-eyed inspector, but there's still time to catch up with her college friend Claire.
So what sort of thing are you going to be teaching?
Well, we've just started the GCSE syllabus, so we're going to do poems from different cultures, and I thought I'd do half-cast.
Standing on one leg.
Yes, that's right, yeah. So I'll be there standing on one leg.
I know Louise from Homerton College. She's very calm in difficult situations, and I'm sure she'll do fantastically well. I'm sure she's excellent already.
I've never been observed by an Ofsted inspector or by an HMI inspector, and I'm quite excited in a weird way to get the sort of luxury of being observed by one of these inspectors, to get a really honest appraisal and a breakdown of my teaching. So I'm incredibly nervous about the whole thing, but I'm also quite excited because I think it's quite a unique experience, quite a unique opportunity.
It's the morning of her observation, just time for some reassurance from Head of Department Rachel Kitley.
I've really tightened up my lesson plan, and I've made sure that I know the timings of everything, and everything's really tight, and I'm going to move it through everything at a good pace. So I just have to get in there now and do it and see how it goes, I think.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
I hope so.
Try not to be nervous.
OK.
With hundreds of inspections under her belt, School Inspector Claire Gillies leads inspection teams up and down the country. She certainly knows an outstanding lesson when she sees one.
This is Louise teaching Year 9 English, and I'm obviously hoping to see a good lesson and maybe some outstanding elements as well.
Louise has 55 minutes to impress the inspector.
Right. We've got 2 aims for today's lesson. Aim 1 is to understand how Agard, that's the poet we're going to be looking at today, uses language to create the tone of his poem. And also, aim 2, to produce a PEE paragraph, a point evidence...
An accepted understanding of outstanding compared to good is that all pupils in a class have made at least the amount of progress you would expect in a lesson.
Right, I've got 4 lines which come from the poem. Now, what I need you to do is decide how you are going to say those 4 lines. You might say the line really loudly. You might say the line really quietly. You might say the line in a really sarcastic way. Just read through the lines and decide how you're going to say them.
The key elements that I'm looking for in a lesson: are the children absorbed? Are they all keen to do their best? Do you get the feeling they want to join in, that they like learning about that subject or topic?
Rachel and Paul, and mix a black key with a white key in a half-cast symphony.
Humorously.
Why humorously?
Because it's they're trying to make a joke out of it, saying that humorous is a joke.
So a humorous use of language you felt, which is why you'd say the line in that way. Lovely. These lines come from the poem Half Caste. So it is time now for us to have a look at the poem. Excuse me, standing on one leg. I'm half caste. Could anyone just tell me what they think the theme of this poem is? Nicola.
He's trying to explain that by someone saying half caste, they're not actually half something.
Thank you, Nicola. That's a really lovely answer. That using the term half caste suggests that you're half a person, and he's almost mocking that idea and taking that idea to be that you can't be half a person. Of course you can't be. Now, you're going to have a go at writing your own PEE paragraph. Now, this is what's going to happen. I've got your question up here. There is also an extension task. I'm going to work with the group in the middle, and I am going to be expecting the rest of you to get on with your paragraphs in silence. So if you could all highlight what you think the effect of the language is for me. What you think the effect is. That's right, Danny. You can have elements of outstanding in your lessons. You can do things that are considered to be outstanding. But your lesson will only ever be good because you're not using those tasks in the right way. The lesson isn't flowing in the right way, and maybe those tasks aren't quite linking back to the aims and the objectives of the lesson. What I want you guys to do now is spend 2 minutes reading through your own paragraphs and see what target you could give yourself.
I think the best bit about the lesson was when she was saying her poem. I found that quite enjoyable.
All targets written. Put your pens down for me.
The lesson was like a bit tricky because I didn't know half the stuff that we were going to cover today. So by the end of the lesson I learnt it, but it was really confusing at the beginning.
So how did Louise get on?
Louise, thank you very much indeed. I really enjoyed that lesson.
Okay.
Now let me highlight all the things that I think you've got such skills as a teacher. You virtually didn't have to worry about behaviour management at all, did you? And you clearly planned your lesson extremely well in terms of differentiation, that wonderful word. And as for your sort of presentation skills, I mean, there's definitely an actress inside you. The way you read the lines of the poem was just inspirational. And certainly as a whole, the lesson was good and it was effective and they learnt a lot. What I felt didn't just take it onto that really higher plane. The beginning of the lesson was, I think you just said, right, come along, we've got these aims on the board, but there was no why are we going to hear about this poem. And I found certainly two over here who were a bit hazy about what half caste means in everyday life. And that sort of underpins so much of what you were trying to get across. And to just have 4 little sentences like we had, and read them out and discuss them before we really had got them into context and sort of thinking behind that.
Building on the idea of tone, and so I didn't necessarily want to give them the poem as a whole and have that whole text for them to deal with. I wanted it sort of broken down into chunks for them. And
I understand exactly, but weighing up how much emphasis to give to the sort of moral content of the lesson as opposed to the sheer, this is an English lesson, we are going to practice writing, that's where the balance becomes, I think, very difficult for you. Some of them gave some really interesting answers. You've obviously got the idea of sort of wait for them to give the answer, don't rush it, but there certainly could have been some more extension. You were keen to get on, so clearly you sometimes extended their answers rather than trying to get them too. I mean, you've got so many teaching strengths. And I'm being, in a sense, super critical of really what were they going to take out of the lesson, what had they learnt, what were they going to be thinking about. Maybe the wholeness wasn't going to sort of go out of the room. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.
She can definitely go from good to outstanding because she's already got many elements that make her a good teacher. It's going to be a question of balancing the English that she's teaching with the implications of such a deep poem.
It's finished. It's finished.
Yeah!
Woo!
How did it go? You waited?
No, I'm pleased with how it went, and I'm glad it's over.
You're tired?
I'm really tired. I was up at 6. So I think this afternoon I'll have to go home early and have a bit of a nap.
The first observation is now behind her. The inspector highlighted Louise's need to sharpen up her lesson structure and achieve a balance between context and language skills. Now it's time to bring on the experts. To boost Louise's progress, help comes from communications coach Roger Terry and advanced skills teacher Emma Potts. They start by watching Louise's lesson.
This is the beginning of the lesson. That's what she felt at that moment.
Yeah. You can see that they've got a good rapport with her.
And I'm going to do this exercise.
Although she's got quite a loud voice, her resonance isn't commanding enough.
We've got 2 aims.
She did include a plenary. She didn't, however, go back to the objectives.
Now, this is what's going to happen.
And change the way she uses her gestures so she's not spending a lot of time clasping her hands together, but how she creates a really good learning environment.
I've seen your lesson, and there were some brilliant parts of it. Now, one of the main things that I really think will make your lessons outstanding is the use of assessment for learning. The main characteristics of it are that we share learning objectives with the pupils.
Yes, I call them aims, but I suppose perhaps I should call them objectives. Maybe my objectives could have been clearer.
Right.
And maybe I could have used outcomes so that they knew what was going to be expected of them in the lesson.
Yeah, and it's like a tick criteria for them. What have they learned in that lesson? How can they prove it?
Yeah.
We look at just a lesson where I managed to get outstanding. Amazing. So the objectives that I gave them, that I displayed on the interactive whiteboard, but also on a board at the side, so they're there constantly throughout the lesson. So it might be blowing them up on A3 paper. Now, I was thinking, in terms of outcomes, how am I going to know that they've understood what those objectives are? So they had 3 cards, and they all had to hold up. They had the cards each.
Okay.
And they had to hold up which card met which objective. But I do think they were then very clear about what they were learning and how they could actually meet that.
Because then they know that what they're doing and how it meets the objectives themselves in their own minds. I don't even necessarily have to say anything.
And again, throughout the lesson plan, every single section's got sharing objectives and outcomes, sharing objectives and outcomes. It just refocuses the lesson at all times. You might even do mini plenaries, you know, small activities within those.
It then really focuses the students back to exactly what they're doing. It stops it from getting woolly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
One of my problems at the beginning of this has been my planning and making sure my aims and my outcomes are clear and focused, and all my tasks are building to my aims and my outcomes. And she's shown me some really excellent ways of how I can build in different tasks and make my pupils incredibly aware of what they're doing and why they're doing it.
One of the things I'd like to do is to get you to play with where you position your voice, because what's really, really useful in the classroom is if you can drop your voice onto any particular person.
Okay.
And there's a way of teaching you to do this. Now, this is kind of a voice catcher.
Right.
So all you need to do is to imagine that you're putting your voice into that cup. If we do this right, what I'll feel is a vibration in the cup because it's a nice thin cup. Now tell Johnny in here.
Johnny, turn round.
Excellent.
Johnny, turn round.
Excellent.
Johnny, turn round.
Okay, now I can feel a vibration on that when you do that, so that's good targeting. Tell Johnny to turn round once more.
Okay. Johnny, this is the last warning. Turn round.
Very good.
Now, this is what's going to happen.
You tend to have your gestures here, and they all fit into this box here. So what I want you to do is that we're going to start off with, I want you to get your gestures a little bit bigger. In fact, it'd be really good. You know, when you're creating a picture for people, you really want your hands right up here.
Yeah.
How does that...
Weird.
Even higher up than that.
Don't like it.
You don't like it?
Don't like that at all.
Feels strange.